Welcome to the first episode of Pitch to Profit. My name is Oliver Keane. I will be your host for this show. I am joined by a very special guest. She is a lifelong Wrexham fan, a former player and midfielder for Wrexham Ladies FC, a current co-commentator for the first team matches alongside Andy Morell, daughter of former Wrexham, Wigan and Doncaster striker Neil Roberts, and just a generally great person. How you doing, Mia?
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm very good. Thank you, Ollie. Thanks for having me.
No worries. So the premise of the show is this is a show looking at behind the scenes of football. So we're looking at people involved in the business side of the game. We will hope to have former players like yourself on as well. But the idea is we're going to look behind the scenes. We're going to look at careers. So people involved in media, commentary, a commercial, all that kind of thing. And how does it run? How can people get involved in the game? Because it is quite closed sometimes and quite difficult to access. We know ourselves. So just looking at these different factors, you and also you as a fan of the team and how Wrexham are doing as a business on the whole. And we're just going to delve straight into that. So the first thing I'm going to ask you, Mia, is what's your background with Wrexham? How did you become a fan and everything?
Yeah, so pretty much from day one, born and bred in Wrexham Mile Hospital, where I took my first breath. um, and yeah, just immediately born into a footballing family, really. Like you said, my dad was a professional footballer. My uncle was a professional footballer. My great auntie Mai played for Wales. It's sort of one of those things. I know it's quite, a generic statement, family of footballers, but we are just a massive football family, and at the heart of that is Wrexham AFC. We've also got some Liverpool fans in there as well, so I'm a bit cross paths with them, but yeah, just absolutely born into it, and I've always loved it, whether that's been watching it, playing it, listening to it, whatever sort of connotations you put with it. It's just always been a massive part of my life, and yeah, since I was very little, going to the race course to watch Wrexham pre Hollywood, if you like. I always like to get that in, that I was there before it. Nothing against the people who've come in since, because I think they've only added to it, obviously, not just in terms of financially, but the whole picture. But yeah, always loved Wrexham. It wasn't something to maybe brag about like it is now, especially in school, when it was just a feeling of we were never going to get out the National League. We were probably only ever going to end up going lower, which is now saying it sounds quite mad, but that was the sort of reality. But yeah, it's been a massive part of my life. I'm very lucky to now say I work for the club, in a commentary role, which was never planned, but also a massive part of my life in terms of playing for the club as well, which for 2 and a bit years I did for the women's side, getting promotion with them, and experiencing some of the sort of best days of my life so far, with them as well. So yeah, it's super important to me, and always will be, I think.
That's amazing. I mean, so you say your dad was a professional footballer, your uncle and your auntie. Um, did that
Mm.
put a pressure on to that you wanted to be a player or be involved in the game somehow from day one, or was it just you got into it as well because that's their interests as well as yours?
Y- Yeah, I wouldn't say pressure. I think it's just something, and this isn't just those three you mentioned. Like, my mum is massively into football. My nana, my mum's mum, she loves it. You go around to hers, the football's always on, and it's just one of those things, I guess, isn't it? I say football in family. Funnily enough, my younger brother and sister aren't really that bothered, so I think that shows maybe you can be around it in terms of your environment, and it doesn't necessarily have to rub off. Or they just were fed up of everyone talking about it and said, we're going to make a change. But yeah, I think, there was never a pressure from, my dad or anyone really to say, right, you need to go into the footballing world. It's always very much from them. And, I'm very lucky to come from a very lovely family. I've been brought up very well, in the sense they've always said, do what you want to do what you love. And football's been what I love, so that's what I've done. And it's as simple as that, really. Obviously, being a girl as well, that sort of made things a bit different in terms of growing up wanting to play. There wasn't hardly any girls teams around in Wrexham at the time, and if there was, they weren't necessarily in leagues, they weren't playing matches, which is what I wanted to do. Hence why I played in boys teams pretty much till I was 14, 15, till
Amazing.
literally till the laws said you couldn't, which was fine because they were all getting a bit bigger than me by then, so I was quite happy to move over. But yeah, I've like I say, very lucky to have a very supportive group of people around me. Who've always sort of said, you know what, if you want to play with the lads, you go for it. If you want to do this, do that, then you go, and you show them what you can do.
That's amazing, and it is key. Like, if you're going to get into football, you got. I feel like you've got to love it in some sense. Yeah, there are the
Mm.
exceptions. It is also a business commodity, but if you love it, especially with you working at your club, playing for your club, it brings that extra desire and motivation to succeed and to help people and keep on doing with things. So you said earlier that you got a promotion under your belt when you were playing there.
Yeah.
Firstly, what position did you play, and how was that experience of playing for them, just like your dad did on the men's side, and getting that promotion? How was it?
Yeah, it was pretty surreal, really. I'd just the year before, I'd signed for the under-19s with Wrexham, which they'd literally just set up. One of the former Wrexham players, a legend in Gareth Owen, had come into the club and was working alongside his wife Gemma Owen, who was basically heading up all the women's side of things, and he took over the under-19s. So I went in, signed from TNS with the 19s after trialing and obviously getting in, and then immediately, I remember our first session with the 19s, the senior team were training on the other side of the pitch, and I remember Gaz saying to us, I love working with you girls, but I want you to be on that other side of the pitch. And immediately that was the ambition to get into the senior side and try and just get involved with them and try and make your senior debut, I guess. And I think I was the first of that under 19s group to actually get over to the other side, which is something I was very proud of because there was a lot of talented girls in that team. And then yeah, from there it spiraled. That year we missed out on winning the league on the last day. Came down to the last day against actually the side I play for now, Llandudno. They beat us. I think it was an 89th minute winner, very painful one. But then, like you say, the next season we went unbeaten all year, won every game and won the league, and then won the playoff final against Britain Ferry, the team who won their league from down south. And yeah, that was just, it was unbelievable. It mirrored the men's team winning promotion in the National League too. So there was just an unbelievable feeling in the club as a whole, really. And we were very lucky that Robin Ryan, really lifted us up as much as they did the men's team in the sense of making sure we felt just as big as them. And I think that was something that we, really took. We were really grateful for, because they didn't have to do that. you
Yeah,
know, we knew what it meant for the men's team to get out of that league, and a lot of us girls in that women's team were fans of them. So for them to get us involved and keep us included was brilliant. And we got to do the bus tour with them. We were on our own bus, just one behind them, and Robin Ryan chose to come on our bus, which was
amazing.
mental, just absolutely mental. And yeah, like I say, it's going to be up there for me as one of the best days of my life. And one of the best probably years or seasons, if you like, in football terms of my life, just because everything just was just pretty insane. From going watching the men's games on a Saturday and then pulling the shirt on yourself on a Sunday for the women's team, and then how the seasons ended for both sides was pretty special.
That is amazing. And like I said, we're friends, so I already know you and I know a lot of things about you, but I didn't know that you'd missed out on promotion the previous season with an
Mm,
89th minute winner to the opposition. Just
yeah.
speaking on that, obviously as a fan, if you miss out on a promotion in that way, it's heartbreaking and it's gut wrenching. But as a player, what is obviously it's a sad feeling, but what's it like? Is it motivation to continue next season and to right the
Mm.
wrongs because you did end up doing that? Is that the mindset, or is it just this sucks?
No, it was honestly it was gutting, because we'd sort of turned things around massively that season. Like I said, it came from a number of the 19s being promoted sort of into that senior side, whilst also we still played for the 19s on a Friday night, and then we'd go with the senior team on the Sunday too. Um, but yeah, the senior team hadn't started so well, hence why a number of the 19s suddenly got brought up into things. There was a bit of a change of management. and suddenly we'd gone on a really good run and found ourselves, one game away from winning the title. And yeah, and weirdly, like I said before, the next season mirrored the men's. That season also kind of did too, because they lost in the National League semi-final, I think it was, to Grimsby at home. So both had really sort of that was in extra time as well, actually. So both sort of sides again had quite difficult sort of first proper seasons in the sense of under Rob and Ryan.
Yeah.
So it was really hard. I still remember that game now because it's where I play my football now every week. That the away games, and yeah, it was horrible. I think as a player, you always want to be in those good moments, whether it's in a final or just whatever. But I think I was only 18 at the time, and it was really difficult because you're going in and the manager's saying we'll be stronger next year, and you're looking round and you just can't see any positives whatsoever. But he was right, and I think it gave us an extra. Well, it definitely gave us an extra edge the next season because we knew what that pain had felt like, and I think that's something I take with me today. When you go in through maybe a hard time or a difficult moment, you go, well, no, now I know what this feels like. It's only going to get better.
Yeah, 100%. And, I guess the whole feeling of the club, like you said, that was Rob and Ryan's first season in charge for the men's and the women's team. And
Mm.
then next year, the second year, you completely flip it on both the men's and women's team. You achieve that promotion that's key. And the club's just kicked on from there and carried on. For those that don't know, 3 back-to-back promotions for the men's team under Phil Parkinson. They've really kicked on. The financial success of the club has changed as well. It's gone from being valued at 2 million when Rob and Ryan bought the club to 150 million is the rumored figure now,
Mm.
obviously in the championship. It's a crazy turnaround, and you've been part of that from the beginning in some way or another. Obviously you've always been part of Wrexham as a fan, and I know, speaking to you, that whenever you tell someone you're a Wrexham fan, they instantly assume that you've been it since the takeover. Does that get annoying for you as well?
I think it's natural, isn't it? I think, I remember the days when we were in National League and when Neville and Class of '92 took over Salford, and you'd look at them with absolute disgust. I remember them coming to our place on Boxing Day, and I think it was 2018, maybe a bit before, and we battered them 5-1. And I think we sung to them, all the songs that get sung at us now with the feeling of, oh well, we'll never sink as low as them and get owners with money and just buy the league. But I think that's absolutely the right way to go now. Completely changed my mentality. But no, I think when people ask that, of course they're going to ask that. It's just the common question. And like I say, I have nothing against fans that have, say just watched the documentary and have fallen in love with the club, because there's no rule against that. I think if they feel very passionate about the club, if they want what I want in terms of the club to be run successfully and be successful on the pitch, then what gives them less of a right than me?
100%. And obviously and we'll get onto this later, there is a strong community feeling at Wrexham, and Rob and Brian have helped enhance that with some of the programs and stuff they've done. Obviously the feeling around the football club success does always help with that kind of thing, but also what they've done, the marketing to America. Now I'm a Blues fan, we've got American owners, but in terms of that, we're not there yet in what you guys have done. A few extra years on us. There's a lot of fans in the United States who they're not picking MLS clubs; they're picking Wrexham as their team.
Yeah.
And obviously, you've got the World Cup in 2026 in America as well. And that, whenever you have an international tournament somewhere, more people get interested in that place in football. And they've really capitalized on that. Have you had any interactions of not the owners, but with American people in general who've come over to watch the games?
Yeah, bizarrely, loads. It's just insane. I think you'll hear a lot of people say it if you watch any sort of this like Wrexham content, in the sense that you can go into town now and you'll hear American accents, and that is just crazy because I still look at Wrexham as my little town, even though we're now officially a city, which I'll never call it. Um, and it's just my home. It's just where people I know live, and it's always going to be that to me. But now you go and there's people coming over from America, Australia, Canada, wherever across the globe, because they've just watched this program on their TV and they want to see what it's like, and they seem to just love it. Because when I speak to people about coming over, and I'm saying to them, but why? Why have you, why have you spent all this money? And they go, because we just love it. And the thing they say most is that it's no different from what they see on screen. The people are the same, the streets are the same. I'd like to think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
When they say that, but it is just insane. I saw a statistic not long ago that said, I think three of the top most well-known non-US clubs in the US are, I think, maybe Manchester United, Wrexham, and Richmond, as in the club of Ted Lasso, which is just, insane. Like, one of them isn't even a real football club, but Wrexham are somehow also in that conversation. It's ridiculous, but it shows the power that the media has, and obviously people like Ryan Reynolds and Rob Mack, in terms of their influence and sort of power, I guess.
Yeah, and no disrespect to Wrexham or AFC Richmond, but Manchester United, in football, you can not like them, but they've been until the past decade or so, they've been ridiculously successful with
Mm.
Premier League titles, Champions Leagues, European Cups. Sir Alex Ferguson, Cristiano Ronaldo, the biggest players around the world. So to be in that bracket is in what 4 or 5 years of their ownership just shows
Mm.
how much on the business side, how important the marketing can be as well. And
Yeah.
obviously innovation with the documentary and how they've not just focused on, it's easy to focus on the matches and the players and blah, 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 but the whole club and the community around it, including you, I believe you were in the documentary as well, right?
Yeah, again, just bizarre, but yeah, just obviously during my time when I was playing for the club, the cameras were around, and you just got to know the people behind the cameras as well, who are all absolutely brilliant, beautiful people, who I've had some brilliant nights out with, for one. They can have a really good night out, but also just really kind, genuine people who you end up talking to and sort of forgetting the camera's there. And I suppose that's obviously a skill of theirs, that you can look in, I suppose, two lights, in the sense of you do get quite comfortable, but also that is down to them just being really down to earth people. But yeah, I spoke to him a few times whilst I was playing for the club, and then obviously since after. And yeah, just now and again, my little, well, I was going to say my little head, we've got quite a big head, will pop up on Disney Plus.
That's amazing, isn't it? I need to go back through and watch it again and spot you now, because I
Please
didn't know you
do.
when I watched it the first time. So now I'm gonna have to go back through and watch that. But it is an amazing thing, and it is one of the most watched documentaries ever. I think, especially on Disney Plus, it helped the platform itself as well continue to grow and succeed. So that's an
Mm.
amazing thing. So you got the promotion to Wrexham. You ended up leaving the club in terms of as a player, but you get this opportunity for the co-commentary. How does that come about?
Yeah, so it was a bit of a random one. Like, I mentioned before, comms and media was never the plan. I was released by Wrexham, which was a bit of a weird situation, in terms of just it. There was very little communication about it, and it was a bit of a just terrible summer after what was one of the best times of my life. And I spoke a bit about this on the documentary, actually, purely because they wanted to hear about, not always the perfect sides of football and the perfect sides of Wrexham, but also the stories that aren't so nice.
Yeah,
And yeah, that sort of came about. I basically found out I was released, to put it in short, basically found out I was released via Twitter. And that was horrendous.
I can imagine.
Wasn't ideal. And then from there, just wasn't sure if I wanted to play football, and wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And it was just super difficult. But then a few months later, got contacted by the club, and they said, "Do you want to come in and do some co-coms on the women's games, just on a voluntary basis?" And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'd love to. So I did, and got some really good feedback because this is because the women's games were starting to be streamed on the Wrexham website because there was suddenly interest from the US new viewers going, well, we love women's football, we want to see the women's team as
Yeah,
well. So they started streaming them, which is absolutely brilliant. And so yeah, Mark Griffiths, who's the main commentator for the men's, was also doing the women's. So I jumped on with him for a few games, and yeah, I got some really good feedback from both the club and just generally people watching, which was really nice. And yeah, it sort of went from there really. I then started playing again for Llandudno, so that meant I wasn't as available on Sundays for the Wrexham women's games because they'd clash. And then yeah, last summer or summer before last, sorry, got a call from one of the media guys at Wrexham, basically saying, "Do you want to trial doing? We've got a new idea for sort of media side for the men's games. We want to do a new co-coms team, and do a match day live sort of show, which is pre-match, half-time, and post-match, and we'd love you to be involved." And
amazing.
I got that message whilst I was on holiday, and didn't tell anyone, didn't tell my dad, didn't tell my mum, didn't tell anyone, and just sort of waited to see what happened, if anything was going to happen of it, because there was no promises on that. It was just an idea, and then did the final preseason game because the rest of the preseason games were in the US. So I wasn't, wasn't able to commute over to them. But I did the final pre-season game, which was Fleetwood Town at the racecourse, and it sort of went well. And then we did the first game of the season, which was Wickham, which was a really good game, which also I think went fairly well.
Yeah.
And then basically was told, right, we're going to run with this for the rest of the season. And yeah, fast forward to now, doing co-coms in the Matchday Live in the Championship.
It's such a cool story, especially for someone who's a fan of a club. I mean, the journey from getting released, finding it out on Twitter. I got benched in primary school football when I conceded an own goal, and I was heartbroken. That doesn't compare at all to this. So, like that, if I played for Birmingham City and that happened to me, I would have been absolutely gutted. But then to bounce back, get the opportunity. Sometimes it's who you know as well,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
which is great, for anyone who's looking to get into it, network with people, try to meet people, ask questions. It's a great thing to do. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing that you got the opportunity to commentate and clearly did well on the women's games as well, because like you said, um, in America, they love the women's game. The national team is very successful, and some of their female clubs are more watched than the actual MLS clubs and their
Mm,
players. So that's amazing. So you said you did the first game against Wickham, right, in League One?
yeah.
Yeah. How nervous were you for it? And I'll ask this as a second question. How much has your prep changed from that first game to now doing the commentary? Because it's been a couple of seasons. So yeah, go on.
Yeah, no, I was definitely nervous because, as much as it was great experience doing the women's, it's a completely different game almost because the women's stuff I was doing, I was using a lot of my knowledge of playing with those girls, and I knew what they were like in training in the week, and I knew how, I knew what decisions they were going to make just from that relationship I'd had the season before. And I used that a lot for my analysis. So for to then be doing it on the men's side of things, which don't get me wrong, that's a team I'd obviously watched every game and seen up close because I'd watched the games live and whatever. But it's there was a lot of self doubt there in the sense of, well, if someone's listening, they're gonna go, well, who's she to sort of have an opinion on whether Paul Mullin should take that shot with his left or right or not. She
Yeah,
she hasn't played at that level, which is completely true. And I still have that sort of thing now, and that's why I'm careful in my critiques. But you've also, it would be completely remiss of me not to critique, because as much as I'm working for the club and the official club channel, if we're totally positive all the time, I think that takes away from the honesty. And truthfulness of our analysis and our comms. And people see through you, I think, as well. People are quite real, and they totally see through that. So yeah. But in terms of prep, I think I've still got all my notebooks from the last year or so, and it's changed quite a lot. I definitely do a lot more than I did. I think it's changed in the sense, probably towards the start of things, I was doing a lot on Wrexham. I think now I do more on the opposition,
Right.
because I think it's so important. As much, like I say, as much as we're going at it from a Wrexham lens, I think you do have to be more neutral in some situations. I still often say, when we were on the ball, in terms of when Wrexham were on the ball, which I
Yeah.
think is allowed. But I think it's good to have a better knowledge on who's going to be marking Kiefer Moore next week, and what can Kiefer then do to get round that or whatever. So yeah, my notes are definitely better than they were a year ago. I think I do a bit more. I've always tried to do a lot. I think last year maybe, um, I maybe did too much at times, in the sense of I find out these stats or whatever, and I think you can sometimes do that much, and then you're sort of trying to find a moment in the game to say it, rather than it being natural and it just flow. And again, I think that comes across. So that was something I tried to work on. But yeah, I think it's also a constant learning thing as well, whether that's you say something and hear it back and you go, oh, I wish I hadn't said that. Or when you're just watching a football game in general and you hear a bit of analysis and you go, oh, that's really good, I'm going to sort of learn from that. So yeah, I think that's something, I say it in terms of when I'm playing, is try and be that 1% better every week, but that also applies to the co-coms too.
Definitely, and it's something really unique as well. It's live, obviously, on the Wrexham channels and stuff. It is,
Mm,
if you make a mistake, you can't just edit it and change it and go back. Um, but it's just
yeah.
about, I think, like you said. But if you do something good as well, in the moment, it can hit so many commentary moments have just come because of, in the moment you think of something and boom, it's said. Like the classic one is Aguero. I don't think he would have planned that pre-match. That he's going to say that.
You
You
never know.
because I mean, you have your notes and stuff, but it is a lot of that. I think it's an impressive skill. It must be tough to have that kind of reactionary to what's going on in the pitch, making sure it's at the appropriate moment, making sure you're saying even things like, I think about, like saying the right player's name. I know they've got the numbers
Mm.
and stuff, but it can easily be mistaken. So is it just a case of that practice over and over again?
Yeah, I think so. I think you do get used to it. I think the other part is there's three of us. There's me and Andy on co-coms, and then Mark as lead commentator. And people always say to me, how are you not constantly talking over each other, as in butting over and whatever?" And honestly, I'm always like, to be honest, I don't know. We've always, since starting, just it's naturally flowed, where obviously Mark will sort of take lead, and then I suppose we've got like the lip mic, so you can kind of see when it's going towards the mouth. So I don't know if that's sort of in the peripheral vision, but it just flows really well. We've got a really nice dynamic, and listen, I had a nightmare a few weeks back at Oxford getting the Murphy twins mixed up. It's Josh Murphy playing. I kept saying Jacob Murphy, as in the Murphy at Newcastle.
Right.
So you're always gonna you're always gonna have your blunders, but I think most of the time you hear it yourself straight away, and then it's up to you whether you want to address it or leave it. Most things are pretty self-explanatory, and yeah, I think some days it does test your eyesight. We had a game last season. I'm trying to think who it was. I can't remember, but it was super foggy, and literally the first goal happened. The sort of phase of play started right the other side of the pitch, and we literally didn't have a clue what happened, because we literally couldn't see it. And we've also got to be aware as well that this season it's been a bit different in the sense of stadiums we're going to have a lot more screens than the games normally being streamed. But at the racecourse, it's up to us to get it on our phone or iPad or whatever, which is normally a couple minutes behind.
Right.
So we don't have always the best access to instant replays, or a director in our ear even saying, right, you need to go back over that and look at that, or whatever. So it's pretty much on us in the moment, and to just sort of say what we see, if you like, as basic as that sounds. But yeah, you can only do you can only do that, and you can only try your best, and we try and get things right, and sometimes we're not, but that's it's an opinions game as well sometimes. But that I think that's what there's a lot of joy in that sort of opinion side of things. I think that's what football's all about.
100%. And, it's about the adapting, and sometimes things are going to go wrong and sometimes things go right. And, that's just life. But you are a co-commentator, and you mentioned them a couple of times, Andy and Mark. How important is the relationship with them? And you also mentioned the opinions thing. I imagine you have clashes sometimes, and what's that like, surrounding the commentary?
Yeah, it's been brilliant. I mean, Mark, I only got to know about just over a year ago now when I started doing the women's stuff. Andy's someone who growing up was one of my heroes because he played for the club. Scored a ridiculous amount of goals, scored over 100 goals for Wrexham,
Wow.
and then went on to be a player manager as well, which was something I always thought was just unbelievable when you had your manager play on the sideline who could then just sub himself on. I thought that was like the coolest thing. I still think it is, to be fair. But yeah, growing up, he was like one of my absolute heroes. So to now be sat next to him every week, and I saw Karen Carney say something about it a few weeks ago, saying when she was a player, she always said it was so much more important to impress the players around you rather than necessarily your manager. And I sort of relate that now to um, for me, it's so important that I get the sort of or I impress Andy and Mark next to me, maybe more than the people listening at times, because I know I really value, their opinions. I know Andy's been at that level. I know he's managed at that level. I know, he is such a talented footballer. And, sometimes when I'm saying stuff and he'll go, I agree with what Mia said. That gives me such a lift
Yeah.
because I go, oh, I was right. um, but it's little things like that. And yeah, there are certain days where we'll come in and we'll obviously have a bit of time before kick-off and whatever to have a chat about things, and we'll have a debate on starting lineups, and that's normally where we'll have our clashes because we'll both have different opinions on what Phil Parkinson should or could do. But it's always done in good jest. We've got a really good relationship, and I think that's another thing that people seem to like, that sort of difference in obviously men and women, but also ages. And I think I try and give my opinions from someone who's watched football their whole life, but maybe hasn't seen a range of football
Yeah.
like Andy and Mark have. And, I think that hopefully comes across, and I think people enjoy that.
It is good as well, because if you have three people who think exactly the same way, the exact same mindset, clashes are what makes interest sometimes. Not saying you're arguing all the time, but look at Sky Sports and their coverage. Most of their attention comes around the clashes between Roy Keane, Micah, Gary Neville, Jamie Carragher, all those type of
Yeah.
people. But yeah, I mean, that's amazing. I didn't realize I knew Andy was a former player, but I didn't realize he scored so many goals. That's pretty cool, like to
Mm.
do it alongside your hero as well. Um, and I can imagine that like that gives you the huge boost, and especially if you end up being right and he's wrong in a debate, maybe that'd be pretty cool. So you commentated together. What has been your best moment on commentary so far, would you say?
Yeah, there's obviously been quite a few, even considering it's been a short amount of time relatively. I'd say number one has to be Charlton at home last year when we actually won and clinched promotion, because for me, one of the amazing things about doing what I do now is the fact, and this applies to, I suppose, being on the documentary as well, but that piece of footage or audio or whatever it is will sort of always be there. And that's something that, whether I stop doing this job tomorrow, in however many years time, if I have grandchildren or whatever family, I can say, well, that's me.
Yeah.
I did that, and that's something I'm really proud to say. And for a game of that magnitude, in terms of um playing Charlton and it coming down to that, and 3 points guaranteed us going to the Championship, and that being a day that will live long in the history. For me to say that I was there and co-commentated on that game is really special, and that's one of the games that I can actually watch the highlights and listen to myself, because I actually thought I did a good job that day, thank God. And yeah, I've watched it a few times or listened to it a few times and not had to turn the volume down, which I do on most of the highlights when I suddenly start speaking. But yeah, that's definitely up there. But there's a number of them, to be honest. I think every game is a privilege, obviously, to be a part of. But yeah, that one's right up there, because it was just from not even minute one, from pre-game doing the matchday live and arriving and starting that and sensing the atmosphere and just feeling a part of it, and just having this thing in you saying something special is going to happen, and then it did, and yeah, it was an unbelievable day.
I can imagine probably one of the best days of your life.
Mm,
I mean, it is really cool story that, like you're saying, no one can take that away from you. No matter what happens, you were
mm,
part of your club's biggest day so far. To get promotion to the Championship in a much quicker time period than anyone would have assumed, and people will hate on it, but screw
yeah.
that. It doesn't matter. Everyone hates on teams that are successful because you're
Yeah.
jealous. I've been that hater. Not on Wrexham necessarily, but on other teams. So no, that's really cool that you can watch it back as well. Because I can imagine, like, when I do a video or something, I hate watching myself speak back. So do you get that generally with like every game when with the commentary and stuff?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think you have to watch some stuff back, and I do force myself, because otherwise you don't learn and you don't see maybe certain things that you said and that you change for next time. So I do have to unfortunately watch some stuff and listen to myself, which like I said, I don't like doing, but I have to do. Um, but it's never nice. It's like when I watch the Graham Norton show a lot, and actors will come on and he'll say, "Well, what did you think about that film you were in?" And they'll go, "Oh, I've never seen it," and I'd watch it going, "Oh, they've never seen himself," and judging them, and then I'm like, "Well, I can't watch myself," so total hypocrite. But yeah, I don't think anyone really likes it, do they? I think if they do, they're probably lying. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe one day I'll look back and watch it with total glee and whatever. But no, that Charlton game is one that I can watch back, and I, to be fair, I have to give myself credit, because it was a super emotionally charged day,
Yeah.
and I somehow kept it together. I'm not quite sure how.
No, I mean it when you're a fan and you're working at a club, it does add that extra. Like if you're working at another club and they get promoted, it's pretty cool. Like you're part of that staff and that experience and blah. But when it's your own childhood club and you've got so many connections to it, to keep yourself cool under the pressure of the moment, it is like
Mm.
you don't want to mess that up. The promotion day. Like you said earlier, like if you mess up a little against Oxford and a random game, you know what? It happens, mistake. But on the promotion day,
Yeah.
you're like, I got to get this right. So that's pretty awesome. And back to the Graham Norton thing. Well, he could have you on there, as a documentary feature, and you could say
Oh
I
my
watched it
God,
back.
imagine.
Gets his cards out. So Mia, how was the documentary? Didn't watch it.
More likely to be in the red chair, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be cool. You just have the most random cast of people next to you: Dame Judy Dench, Jimmy Carr, Ricky Gervais.
Oh
So
God, yeah.
that's pretty cool. So you do the co-coms and stuff, but am I right in saying you've interviewed players as well after the games? What's that experience like?
Yeah, so again, that's with the sort of matchday live stuff we've got going on, which is a bit mad, really. You sort of feel like you're a sort of pundit on Sky Sports or something, probably with a bit less production. No offense to our production team, but yeah, that's something again that started at the same time as the co-coms with the men's team, and um, got a really good host on that called Chris Malaband, who is just totally on it. He sort of creates the running order and has a lot of control, and is got a really good experience in not just football but general hosting and all these sorts of things in broadcasting and whatever. So he's top. So me and Andy will start with him and then run up to the co-coms and do that, and run back down for half time, run back up for co-com second half, and then run back down for post match. So we get our steps in. But no, it's super fun, and yeah, we've had a few times where most of the time Chris will take lead on the interviews because obviously he's the most trained to do that.
Yeah.
But we've had a few where we've been able to jump in as well, and for me that's really quite bizarre because these are, whether it's Phil Parkinson or the players. Just a few years ago I was paying money to go watch them, and or not necessarily players now, I suppose, because they're a complete new bunch, but certainly Phil Parkinson, someone a few years ago, like I say, I was paying to watch and to sing about it in the terraces. So that's it's bizarre, but they're just people as well at the end of the day, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Even though I'm pretty sure Kiefer Moore is something out of Superman, but something not quite right there. But yeah, and they are also lovely people as well. Obviously it's better when we get them after a win, because the mood and answers are normally a little bit better. But I'd be exactly the same, so you can't blame them. And yeah, it's been a really cool experience. Even if we're just getting one or two questions into them to just give, again, it allows us to have maybe a difference of opinion, and something, maybe pick out something we've seen that Chris hasn't seen or Andy hasn't seen or whatever, which is always really good fun.
Yeah, Kiefer Moore. He's no Lucas Djukovic, but he'll do. Sorry, Kiefer. No, but that is really, yeah. It's crazy because, like you say, being that fan, being in the stands, and then now you're alongside the players. But you do realize once you're in football, they're not aliens or whatever. They're not made of diamonds. They're just normal people. They're doing their job and enjoying it, and playing well. And it's a cool experience. And if you treat people the same, then you're going to get the good responses and stuff. I think that's part of being an interviewer, really. Just from an external point of view, just make people comfortable and don't, if you're there like starstruck just the whole time, then it's not gonna work. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So as I've alluded to, there is a slight connection between us. I'm a Birmingham City fan. I'll try to be non-biased in these videos, but I am a Blues fan. And our game, the branded Hollywood Derby, which I know is a term I think we both hate, but it is useful for marketing purposes. There you go. There's a business thing for you. Our game, particularly the one at St Andrews in League One in September 2024.
Mm,
I was there. You were there doing the co-coms. I
yep.
think it was maybe the most watched League One game ever. Obviously, our owners, Tom Wagner and Tom Brady, yours, Rob and Ryan. It was a really highly anticipated match at the time. You were above us in the league as well. What was the experience like? I know the result maybe didn't go your way, but what was the experience like to be in a League One game that was, it was 28,000 people there. You scored the opening goal as well. Take me through
Yeah.
that as a commentator.
Yeah, I think, like you say, it was in September, so it was relatively early on in the season. So it was one of the earlier away games. So obviously at that point I was still relatively inexperienced. I think a few weeks before we had Sheffield United in the cup, which was for me probably the first time I'd been in a stadium of that size, and or been in a stadium of that size as the co-commentator, and sort of seen what that was like. And um I'm not saying that atmosphere was better because it was a cup night. They hadn't really sold too many. I think they to be fair, it was decent capacity.
Yeah,
But yeah, that to be fair, that the Birmingham game was probably the first one I'd done in a stadium like that, out in terms of being away from home, when it was just electric. And it really was. And as soon as we got there was this feeling that, not a derby feeling, because it isn't that, but
yeah,
this feeling of, we really want to get one up on the other. And I think, listen, I don't think there's is there a rivalry? I don't know what the right word is for it, but there's certainly an edge, I think, to that game. I think that's fair to say. Um, but yeah, it was incredible. I remember, the players coming out and the fireworks going off, the flamethrowers or whatever there was, and just sort of having to sit back and be like, oh my God, this is the big time. We've done it. And then started really well. Jack Marriott, was it? Yeah,
Yeah,
was it Jack
it was
Marriott?
Marriott.
Yeah, it
Yeah, it
was
was
Jack
about
Marriott.
5 minutes in. I was
Yeah, wheeling
heartbroken.
away wheeling away after a poorly defended corner, and then yeah, Blues just took complete control and absolutely battered us and showed us the standard that we were far from. So yeah, full credit to you that night because you were absolutely exceptional. I don't remember criticising you once really. Um, yeah, it was a brilliant game of football to watch, not necessarily from a Wrexham point of view, but it was brilliant and yeah, certainly set the standard, like I said.
You heard it here first, folks. Birmingham City, the big time. So, no, I mean, it felt like I've been going to football matches all my life in a higher division as well. I started off watching when we were in the Premier League, we got relegated, and then Championship for the longest time. But then to League One, other than when I went to Blues Villa, and that is a derby, a proper derby. I've never
Mm,
been in an atmosphere like that from both sets of supporters. It was amazing, but just the feeling around the club. I mean, we had David Beckham there, Gary Neville, Romeo
yeah.
Beckham, but like your owners, our owners. But it wasn't just that. It was the feeling. It felt like a Premier League top of the table clash happening in League One. Um,
Yeah.
and it was crazy, but in the end, it didn't matter because we both got promoted in the automatic spots. We're both in the championship now, and we'll kick on in the future. But I had to, as a biased Blues fan, bring that night up because I think take away the result, take away the game, just look at the business side of it and how it was. It was absolutely electric. The TV ratings must have done pretty well as well. The figures, I imagine, because I think it was a
Mm.
Monday night football as well. It was weird. It was weird. It was a Monday, I think.
Yeah, because then I think the reverse game at our place was a Thursday night, which was equally a bit strange.
Yeah, it was
Um,
2 weird
but yeah.
days. Yeah. So they kept comparing it to like Monday Night Football in the NFL and that kind of thing. So, they had all the Americans watching our game before the NFL late time kickoff. So yeah, no, that was an awesome event. But you're doing well now.
Mm.
We've been a bit boring at 2 games since then though, 2 draws. So that's why I brought up that one.
Yeah. No, I know why you brought up that one. But yeah, we're still waiting to get 3 points off you, I think. So hopefully that wait won't be too long, but we'll have to wait and see.
Hopefully, we can get promoted to Prem before that happens. But anyway, no. So you're in the championship now. Phil Parkinson's done a phenomenal job getting you there. From the very bottom of the English pyramid all the way to doing pretty well in the championship thus far. What's your expectations? What's your feelings? How are you enjoying life in the second division?
Yeah, I think it's a weird one. I think, a lot of people said this, after we'd got promoted and during the summer, what does success look like to you? And my answer was quite simple, really, just to stay in the championship. And I don't know whether, obviously after we've spent the money we spent over the summer and the 13 players that have come in, that should shoot up. But really, to me, I think this year is just about staying in the championship and making sure we can start to build something and see the early signs of something that can maybe push on to something special next year. I don't know, but after looking at the start of this championship season and seeing maybe the three sides that have come down haven't done too well. There's not necessarily. I know you could pick up Coventry maybe as a strong front runner, but even in them, you can maybe see signs of previous with Frank Lampard, where his teams have started very well and then, gone on a bit of a losing streak or whatever. So it's, it's also quite hard to say, well, write us off. I don't, I don't like doing that with this Wrexham team because they've proven time again that you shouldn't do that. And Phil Parkinson um, certainly has something to prove in this division because a lot of people think he's not cut out to be a championship manager, and That again, that's something you shouldn't do against a man like that because he's super determined to prove people wrong. And like I say, the money spent, the players that have come in are real top quality, and add into what was already a very decent quality squad. So, maybe a top 10 finish is maybe more where we should be looking. But like I say, I'll be very happy as long as we're still in the Championship next season, if not higher.
Yeah, the Championship is I think the toughest division in the world. I mean, you win your Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday. Suddenly you shoot up the table. You can go from the
Mm,
relegation zone to cusp of the playoffs or whatever, and it is anything can happen. Teams that you wouldn't expect get relegated, teams out of nowhere are suddenly in the promotion race. So I feel like for you guys, without any bias, genuinely, there is a chance you sneak in the top six. There've definitely been worse teams who've snuck into that top six race and even gone on to win the playoffs. So I don't think you can write anyone out. I don't think the championship has. I mean, Coventry have been excellent, but I don't think it has that dominant factor. The dominant teams it's had in the past, like your Leicester's in the past when they got relegated, Burnley's,
yeah.
maybe your Leeds's, West Brom when they were really good. There doesn't seem to be any team that's going to get 105 points or something like that. So why not
Mm,
for Wrexham?
why not?
But yeah, so me, I just want to end on a question for you. So, what advice would you give to anyone who's looking to break through or progress in the football industry? Yeah,
Yeah, I think, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because, we're still relatively starting out, I'd like to think,
yeah, yeah.
in
We're not done
in the
yet.
football industry. I hope this is not me jinxing that. But no, I think, for me over the past few years, a lot of the experiences I've gained have come from, like you mentioned earlier, building relationships with people and, sort of being yourself as well. I think that was something my dad always tried to tell me is, when you go into a room, try and speak to people, but don't put on a false persona. You want to be yourself. You want to impress people by your own personality and your own values. But also, with that, sometimes you do have to maybe put on a bit of false confidence. Like, I've certainly had to do that over the past few years, and that won't bring you any harm either. But I think probably one of the biggest things for me is that sort of stepping out your comfort zone
Yeah,
and saying yes to things because that certainly in my case has been the difference over the past few years. When I've been given opportunities, which again, I'd say I'm very lucky and very grateful and obviously in a privileged position to have those opportunities given to me in the first place. But to maybe not overthink them too much and go, well, what are the negatives, and actually just sort of not necessarily dive in head first, but you know, be a bit more rational and actually go, well, no, this could be amazing for me. I'm going to try it, and even if you try it and you hate it, and it's not what you thought, at least you've given it a go. And I think that's what it's all about. Saying yes to things, being open, and yeah, just even if you think it's not for you, just give it a go because you absolutely never know. There's a little rhyme in there. Um, but yeah, it's like for my case, I never wanted to go into media, and I very much wanted to be behind the camera in the sense of more business and sort of off pitch, and that's completely not what I'm doing now. So you don't know how things are gonna pan out. So I think embrace that at times and don't necessarily have too much structure. I think a plan is important.
yeah.
You need to sort of know what you're going week by week. But this whole thing of, oh, I know exactly what I want to be in 10 years. I don't think that is necessarily true. Because you just don't know what's going to happen.
100%. That's brilliant advice. Thank you so much, Mia. I think, yeah, it like we said about the relationship building as well, and the skills you will have gained from the commentary will definitely be
Mm.
able to be used in the different sides of the business as well. Communication is such a key part of, if you can get things across to people and listen to them as well, and work together, especially in a football club. It's usually even at the high level, quite a tight knit of employees. Um,
Yeah.
then the world's your oyster, and yeah, obviously starting out, but it's good to get advice on how to get your foot in the door, maybe, because that is sometimes the thing that people struggle with, especially nowadays.
Absolutely.
Because every club or business is looking for experience on your CV, but if you can't get the job to get experience, how do you get your foot in the door? So that thing about relationship building, trying things out that you would maybe dismiss, is great advice. So yeah, thanks so much, Mia, for coming on. It's been great having you as the first guest on Pitch to Profit. We hope to have you back
Oh,
on it.
thanks for having me.
Yeah, we hope to have you back on again at some point. We're definitely going to have quite a few more guests lined up as well. Should be good. Mia, thank you for coming on.
Always a pleasure, Ollie. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, guys. Right, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, share, subscribe, and if you got any questions for any business related, any in football, drop it in the comments. Thanks for watching. Bye.